Welcome to our live in the studio edition of Basebin TV.
We had the honor today of sitting down to interview one of the busiest men in the industry, who also happens to be a veteran here at Studio Basebin.
Performing in our studios with his Bryan Adams tribute band, Cuts Like a Knife, Sylvain Auclair. Welcome back in the studio. We are here, as you previously seen, Sylvain Auclair performing with his Bryan Adams tribute band, one of the many bands that this man has. Sylvain, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yay!
Oh my God, yeah. It would be silly not to have you, since you're part of the Basebin family for years. And let's go. We're not going to go all the way back. We're going to go a little back, something like over 20 some odd years. The first time I saw you was as a client.
Yes.
You walking into Steve's Music.
Yes.
And you were on tour, had a problem with your Music Man bass.
Yeah.
I thought you looked quite young to be in a band. How old were you? And you were playing with Heaven's Cry at the time.
That was in 90, 93, 94. And I was with Mick Miette, who is a famous guitar player here. You know, he's worked with Eric Lapointe, or he's still playing with Eric Lapointe. And he was in Heaven's Cry, one of my original bands back then. And then we were playing a show the previous night. And just like a random thing, just before going on stage, he grabs my bass. He goes, "Your action is a little bit high. I can fix it for you."
Uh-oh.
So gets the Allen key in the truss rod, and the action just jumps. So basically, it was a defective truss rod. And I had to play the entire show with an insane action. It was like
Great.
but
So you still did the gig.
the show must go on,
The show
my
must
friend.
go on. Yeah, yeah.
And the next day, that's when I met you for the first time, because he had the idea. Well, let's go to Steve's Music, because that's where my ex-girlfriend at the time had purchased the bass. Because it wasn't even my bass; it was my ex-girlfriend's bass.
Oh my God.
Because I own a 4-string, and she had just recently bought a 5-string. In our repertoire, we're doing some songs with the low B string. And so that was very exciting for me. So fast forward to the next day where we show up at Steve's. I meet you for the first time. And I got to say, the way you... que tu nous as accueillis.
Yeah, the way I greeted you, or the
Yes,
service.
like
It
super
was just-
friendly.
Right.
And you reached out to the owner. Steve was there. And you said, "Oh, this is a super, a great client. You pitched them, and made me feel important, made me feel taken care of, and so that's when I met you for the first time.
I'll pay you later.
Now, was this like an instant bromance? Did you become friends from that point, or not really?
no.
It was just
but-
part of the music
yeah.
family. It was
Okay.
part of the another one added to the list of the music family that I cherished and that I never forgot. And then fast forward, Sylvain was working at HMV,
We
Yes.
all worked at HMV
Right?
at some point.
Megastore.
right? So
But it wasn't a small thing for me, because previously I had worked in manufacturers. I was a tailor.
Really?
Yeah. Like, cutting textile, doing special orders for clients that wanted a specific shirt, So, anyways, but I wasn't playing in the industry. I wasn't part of the industry.
Okay.
I was a working musician because I was playing gigs, on the weekends, or back then it was like 5 days a week. We were playing from Thursday to Sunday
Right.
in the clubs. There's a lot more places to play in the city. But HMV for me was my first job where I was actually working in the industry, selling albums or, promoting artists. And that's when my first job where I felt I was actually contributing to the
You
industry
got to talk about music all day.
all day, and I must have sold like so many copies of that Peter Gabriel Secret World VHS. But anyways, I was working in the rock department first, but then moved into the video department, and that's where I met a friend of mine, Mike Chuba. And we still go out. He's in Calgary now. All right. Yeah. Anyways, but when he comes to town, we hook up. We go eat a ramen or what.
So I initially asked Mike Chuba if
Who
he
was a
wanted
client of Bass
who is a
Bin.
client of Bass Bin. Mike Chuba is in the theater industry now, but
Yes.
I asked Mike. I said, "Hey, would you like to have a job at the studios?" And he says, "Well, actually, I don't think that he was going to be sticking around for long, but he said, I have a great fit for you. And it's Sylvain Auclair from Heaven's Cry." And I was like, "Are you kidding? Hell yeah." Sylvain came in the door. You walked in. You talked to me. We talked for like probably 10 minutes. And I was like, "Yeah, you're hired."
I remember it. So it went like so fast. We talked maybe for like 10 minutes, like you said. Then all of a sudden a client came, and off you went with a keyboard amp.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to go and take care of the clients. And yeah, and that's another thing. Then working at Bass Bin, I was even more in the industry now. So many people that I've met. So many. It's insane the amount of people that comes through these doors and throughout the years. So I started. That was in 2000. That's when I started working with Albert at Bass Bin.
23 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a long friendship.
yeah.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane, and it's such an important part of my life, because that's when it gave me not only the opportunity, which is I'm super grateful, but also the advantage of working in the industry and of having a boss that understands my reality, which is I want to be a working musician. I'm a working musician, and sometimes I'll have to go on tour. Sometimes I'll have to take some unconventional days off, which you don't get in a regular day. The bosses don't understand. Your priority is the job, and if you don't comply to the standards of that, then it's sorry, but next. But so that's it. So I mean, for me, it was like super important. Like I felt in a way that I've made it, you know, in the sense where I was exactly where I needed to be, and for the first time.
That must be a really cool moment in your life. I mean, I think all of us at one point went through that, where you're trying to juggle, you know, the day job while also being a musician, and you can't imagine there being a time where all day, every day is just music. That must have been a really, really cool time in your life to go, wow, all day, every day now, it's just music in one place or another.
Well, I think that I feel extremely privileged, you know, but I don't think there's any better feeling than waking up in the morning and thinking, wow, I'm going to be doing what I love to do.
Now you say it as if it's like this easy path, but you play in a lot of different projects. You play in Heaven's Cry. You are one of the original members of Heaven's Cry. You play in another progressive band called Karcius.
Karcius, yeah.
Which you've often toured Germany, the Netherlands. France.
Yeah.
You've gone on tour like lots of times with that band. You play in a bunch of cover bands here in Montreal. You play in a Tramp tribute.
Sting in the Police.
Sting in the Police. You play in now a new one, which we all have witnessed, the Bryan Adams, which is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
How are you juggling all of this and working at the studio? How do you even like arrange a schedule like that to not double book yourself?
Well, I guess as far as the gigs and the shows and the bands go, since I'm a singer, I'm the main singer, or one, you know, in some cases, one of the main singers. You can't really book a show without having.
So you're a priority.
I think it's about when you put on the hat of an entrepreneur, and you know you have to make a living. And you know also that if you have only one project and you think that one project will suffice in order to pay the bills and you know, to provide for you, then you know, if that project ends or dies or unfortunately, or if something happens, then you're left, you know, with no options. So you have to diversify yourself. So it's not just bands or you know, tribute bands or original bands. Working industry, like I said, bass band is a second home for me. And if not, and doing some vocal productions at home, even recording some karaoke's for a couple of companies, one in Toronto and another one here in Quebec, doing some video editing, or...
So you have to diversify.
You have to diversify.
Yeah. You don't have a choice but to have a lot of different talents to be able to sustain yourself
websites
and to work in the industry. So I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on trying to be a star, and they forget about all the other different ways that they can actually monetize from the industry. And so was that a conscious decision, or did you just like say, well, if this band isn't really taking off, well, at least I have this, and...
I think that the way it happened for me was I was playing with Heaven's Cry. Like we started playing in clubs. 89, I was 17.
Another one.
Yeah.
We meet. We have a lot of artists that are playing in the live scene, like starting at 17, 18, 19, like really, really young, getting their feet wet.
Well, practice makes perfect. So the more you do something, and especially if it comes from because you're saying, you know, people are if people want to attain a certain status of being a star, which I don't think really exists. It's more a status that people bestow upon you. But I mean, personally, I think it all comes from the place where are you passionate about this thing that you do? And then you're doing it for the right reason if you are, or the right reasons. And then once you do it for the right reasons, then whatever the adversity that you might face, whatever might happen, it's an essential part of you. You need to do this. It's like eating. It's like, sleeping, or it's love. It's, so you're doing it for the right reason. Then everything starts to happen because you're so passionate about this thing. For me, it's music. Since I was like a super young, my family had a huge record collection, and they let me listen to. I was like 3 years old, and I was singing in front of the family, at dinner parties and so on. But music was part of my life at such a young age, and I developed a passion for music, falling in love with Elvis Presley, and then Michael Jackson, and then Motley Crue, and then it goes on, because music is a universal language. It transcends all generation, race, color, creed. It's universal. But for me, I was so passionate about music at a young age. I knew that's what I wanted to do in life. The question was, how do I get there? I think if you're passionate about something, it doesn't matter how long it takes, but you eventually find the tools and to continue doing in life what you're passionate about,
So let's talk about those tools a little bit, because you were saying to yourself, how do I make this a reality? This is what I want to do. And right now you wear a lot of different hats: singer, songwriter, musician, sound engineer. Did you at some point decide to go to school for this so that you could kind of have all of those tools that you're talking about?
We weren't very fortunate when I was young, so that's one of the main reasons why I started working in the textile industry, to be able to help my mom, support the family. And so it wasn't in the cards for me to go to school. My mom didn't have the finance to support me to go to school. And to be honest, I was already playing in bands, playing in clubs, writing original material. So basically, my days for me were I get up at 6:30 in the morning, go to the manufacturer, finish at 4:30, come back home, and then go off to rehearsal and rehearse until like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and come back home, sleep 4 or 5 hours, and repeat. Because for me, that was the cycle. So going to school for me was, in a way, I was already learning from being around other older musicians than me. Learning by doing, playing shows. I was already doing the thing that I wanted to do. For me, in my mind, school, I was actually going to school, the school of life, the school of actually doing it for real. So school for me was like a later option where I just wanted to up my skills, because I went from playing my original things to just leaving that on the side a little bit. And because of the opportunity of bass band, meeting other musicians, going through the doors, and all of a sudden offering my services as a hired bass player, that I needed those skills to actually learn music faster, write charts, and be more proficient at learning music faster and recreating, reproducing that music live more adequately. And so that's when it came more as a necessity later on to go to school,
So you were talking about, working in the textile at first and then helping your family kind of with the bills and everything.
Yeah.
You eventually made the move to music. Were your parents and or your family supportive of that move?
I think my mom, for her, when I look back on it, I think the important thing for her was that I was contributing financially and to be able to support, because at that point she was a single mom. And then I was contributing, so whatever I wanted to do with my off time, then it was
That's
my
on you.
thing. Exactly.
So now if we fast forward, you are playing in your original bands and your cover bands. Which takes a priority for you? Like, is there one that, do you want to do a bigger push on the originals, or does it really make a difference as long as you're playing music?
Yeah, I think it's about flow. I don't think it really makes a difference. I mean, the only thing I can say is that when I have some friends that went to school, and that for them to be a professional in the musical industry is to accompany songwriters and artists. They don't write songs themselves, but they always play with artists that write their own songs, and they'll go on tour. They make an amazing living, even a better living that I am making, you know? So for them,
They don't write their own songs.
they don't write their own songs. And so sometimes the subject that will come up is, I got to start writing songs because I'm accompanying and I'm playing with all those amazing artists, but at the end of the line, what will I be remembered for music wise? What do I leave? What musical heritage do I leave behind?
You've had a few different record deals from different record companies. Yeah. What was the first record deal? Was it with Heaven's Cry?
Yeah. That was in 95, and we released the album in 96. Our first album titled Food for Thought Substitute. Canadian company would go and scout, then present bands to Taichiku Records, and they'd be the one financing, you know, giving the check and goes, yes, we love that. Let's finance this first album. And they took a chance on Heaven's Cry.
So you guys were like a Japanese import-export.
I wish we would have gone there and played in Japan, man. That's still one of my dreams. That's a bucket list. I hope one day to go to Japan and play.
So you're basically signed to a Japanese label, but you hadn't actually gone to Japan to play.
No, unfortunately.
And so how did that label support? Was it financed to record a record or for touring?
To finance the recording and the producing of that album. To have that product finished, out, you know, for marketing and distributing. And so there was a momentum. But then, you know, the horror story that you hear so many times in the industry, that Canadian label wasn't supporting us, let's just say that. And eventually, you know, the house of cards just fell on its own. And I could say that personally, that was one of the darkest moments in my life, where you think that there's a moment you're on the brink of, you know, going
almost famous.
Wow.
Almost famous.
Or almost making it and saying, that manufacturer job, I can actually put aside and concentrate, do what I love 100%. And that didn't happen. So I think that my mindset changed then. I had to go through that dark period and figure out what was important for me. Was being famous important for me, or was being able to express myself and do what I love in life, which is music, and make a living? So then the latter for me, or I mean, that second option for me was more important, and that's when I started to diversify myself.
Oh yeah, you had played with so many bands coming through there. At one point, you were like super passionate about playing the stick. Chapman Chapman stick, and then all of a sudden you're playing in all of these bands, playing now the stick, and you were playing with African bands, you were playing with pop bands, you were really open to really diversifying yourself as a musician, to not limit yourself.
Whatever style it is, doesn't really matter for me. I'm still gonna get into it because music is universal and transcends, like I said. So for me, it's the passion. And music is also about connecting with people. Yep. You know, how many times have you got, hey, if you listen to that, or movies or art, you know? Bottom line is, we all want to connect. And music and arts allows us to connect with other people without talking about where we come from geographically, or what our personal differences are. You know, it's kind of a way to bypass all of that and just talk about a common subject that we can agree on,
Absolutely.
Was there a moment where you were doubting yourself and am I going to be able to make this dream sustainable and a reality?
One of the very important persons that I met in my life is when I met Pierre Saint-Jean, who is the other co-founder of Heaven's Cry, That's when it really clicked for me. That's when I really saw the possibilities of actually, making an album that I could be proud of and maybe making it. And that's when we, then, everything falls into place because you got two minds together that are super passionate about music and making this for a living and making it their priority in life. And then, so combining, our energies and our strengths together gave me and gave us the opportunity to actually have our first record deal.
Was he or did you have anyone through this process that you considered a mentor to you? Someone that kind of, paved the way or gave you some guidance?
Up until then, I think I considered him as a mentor because he was older than me. He's like 2 years and a half older than me. And the first time we met, I was 15. He was 17 and a half.
Oh, when you're 15,
Yeah.
the 17-year-old is like an adult.
Yeah.
And he was already playing in clubs.
Sure.
I wasn't, So he said, we're looking for... that mutual friend of ours heard me sing, like I was just singing. I was singing all the time, it's like, this is what I do, It's like walking on the street, listening to Walkman or cassettes. So that mutual friend heard me sing and said, well, I am in a band and we're looking for a singer. And then he called Pierre and said, I think we might have a singer. So he brought me over to meet Pierre, but I was too young. But he said to me something which will always stay with me. He said, don't stop singing because Quebec needs amazing singers. And that stuck with me. So he was, I guess, similar to being a mentor. And then fast forward 2 years after, I'm playing in clubs. He's playing in clubs. And then we reconnect. And I'm in this band Mistress, and he's this band Whiteside. So multiple singers band. So we were...
Because Pierre was a singer also.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Amazing singer. So that's when we start toying with the idea of having this band where there's actually two singers in the band. And so...
I think it's pretty cool that you found two people that said, no, let's do this together.
Yeah. Oh, it's a very special thing. So for me, it's like one of the major important moments in my life is when I met this guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Shout out
Warm
to Pierre
fuzzies.
Saint-Jean.
So after Heaven's Cry, you had another band that got signed to another label, and that was Karcius.
Heaven's Cry was a bit on a break, on a hiatus. We we needed a break from it. It's like it's a family, right?
Yeah.
But
Sure.
at one point, you just need to
Reinvigorate.
yourself in order to actually come back to the fold and bring back something pertinent or
Pertinent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that's when Karcius came to the fold. They had recently lost their bass player, but they wanted to take a new turn. And it was an instrumental band. Their first 3 albums were instrumental. And so they wanted to change direction. That's when they approached me. They actually had booked a 2-week tour in France.
I remember
And that's
that.
how we got to, and Bassman and Albert being, the generous guy that he is, we go on tour. So for 2 weeks, we'll figure out the schedule, somebody else, go on tour, go do your thing. And that's when you go on tour with a band, that's when you know if it's going to be make or break with the
It's a
guys.
test.
It's going to work or it's not going to work. Can you stand these guys, being around these guys 24/7 for 2 weeks? And that's settled. So it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship with them. And so that's when we, fast forward now, we just released our 3rd album, studio album together last year, which was Gray, White, Silver, Yellow, and Gold, which got us some great reviews as well. We even got mentioned. There's this guy from DPRP, which is a Dutch progressive label. One of the reviewers named us Album of the Year last year.
That's awesome.
It's getting some recognition.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big deal. Wow.
So that's love, receiving love from somebody you don't even know, giving you that, giving that kind of importance for something that you've created collectively with your friends, man. This is one of the reasons why I do this. Is because if music can touch and connect people and bring people together over that piece of music, and that's amazing. We're like wolves, where we live in packs. We need to live in community. We need to talk. We need to see each other. We need to live this collective experience together.
And I mean, you see that here. Some days there are, we have all the studios filled, and people are spending more times in the hall catching up and talking than they're playing in their studios.
Everybody running into each other. Hey, what are you here for?
Hugging and high-fiving. And,
It's a great community.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're fortunate to have had you to be part of this community and part of the life here at Studio Basebin. Thanks for the plugs. Like I said, I will pay you later. But
it's all for love.
It's all for love. Is there was there anything else that you wanted to ask him on here?
We just want to plug that latest album. Tell everyone can they buy it? They can go on Apple,
Yes, Bandcamp,
Spotify,
Amazon,
so
record store, if there's any of them still out there.
Do you actually have physical?
Archambault, at Archambault.
You still have physical CDs that are actually distributed?
Yeah, we have the CDs out.
Right.
And the vinyl is coming out because people are buying vinyls now more than.
So why not?
Yeah.
Where are you getting your vinyls printed? I think people would
actually
want to know.
It's Willow Tip. There are a record company that has all the connection and they deal with it. Yeah.
So everyone, please go check it out. It came out on June 23rd. The Anchorette. It all began with loneliness. Stream, like, bye.
Thank you very much, Kayla.
Thanks, Sylvain.
Thanks, Albert.
Next time, see you right here at Basebin TV. Whoosh, 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 whoosh.
Hell yeah.